Kenya was colonized by the British and the rule ran from the early 1900s up to early 1960s. One of the names that were frequently mentioned during the fight for independence was the Mau Mau. The Mau Mau was an anti-colonial movement group of fighters who literally fought for the independence and freedom of Kenya. A large number came from the King's African Rifles, KAR, a military-trained group that fought on behalf of British in the Second World War, which happens in the parts of Burma, Asia. The aim of this group was first of all independence, self-rule, and secondly, the total abolishment of all mistreatment by the British and return of the ancestral land grabbed by the Europeans. The Mau Mau group became famous for their guerrilla warfare tactics. The group, which majorly constituted the Agikuyu, Ameru, and Embu, became so fierce in their actions, and in extreme instances, they massacred families of the white settlers and colonial paramilitary officers. These groups' actions led to the declaration of the state of emergency in 20th of October 1952 after first, the killing of senior loyalist Chief Waruhiu, and secondly, political pressure rising from the Kenya African Union Party, which was largely becoming famous. It was led by Jomo Kenyatta himself. The emergency period lasted from 1952 up to 1960 and included mass detentions without trial, torture and execution of Mau Mau fighters and Kenyan political vocals, and violations of human rights. Now back to Mau Mau. This group gave birth to known figures such as Dedan Kimathi, Field Marshal Musa Mariama, General China, Field Marshal Muthoni Kirima, Jomo Kenyatta, and of course the man who made us prepare this story, General Baimunge. After emergency, days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and months into years. Kenya finally got independence and was declared a republic in 12th December 1963. Jomo Kenyatta became the first ever president of the Republic of Kenya. But here is our question that we will answer today. In fact, right now before this documentary ends. Was Kenyatta first the decision of the British? Was he the one who was legally, and I repeat, legally the person who was to be given power of the top supreme leader? Was there any other person the British regarded as the best fit for presidency immediately they were supposed to leave Kenya? Surely there was. If you didn't know, let me show who he was and why. Just stick with me here and subscribe to BTN Documentaries. That person, without waste of time, is General Baimunge. General Baimunge Marete Mwikangi, who was a Meru native, was believed to have been born around the year 1922. Of course, there were no record keeping of actual birth dates, so this was the most used approximation. He was born in Mwereru village situated at Katheri, Imenti Central, in Meru County. He attended Karunaini Primary School where he received basic education before attending Tumutumu Missionary School. During the 1939-1945 World War II, the British took many Kenyan men and others from their East African colonies to fight on their behalf in the war, especially against the Imperial Japanese Army in Burma. These men were referred to as King's African Rifles. But because the British banned most of the Ameru and Agikuyu from being part of the KAR, Baimunge himself did serve in the army, but was actively in anti-colonialist who later co-founded the Mau Mau group in the late 1940s onwards, together with many of those who fought in the KAR. These former KAR men were skilled in making and using of guns and other military tactics and taught their fellow Mau Mau. And this greatly improved their guerrilla warfare tactics that used against the British. Now, joined by the likes of Dedan Kimathi, Baimunge and other Mau Mau fighters fought with the colonialists in the bush up to the declaration of the state of emergency in 1952, when he and other Mau Mau leaders were arrested and held in detention camps. Being a vocal Meru leader, General Baimunge was known to organize successful killings of the British, so this was a good reason for him to be silenced, and yes, he was detained as well. When Dedan Kimathi, the leader of Mau Mau, was captured in 1956 by the British and later hanged 2 years later in February 18th, 1957, Baimunge out of anger planned his escape from detention. And 1 year later, in 1958, his plan, though tough, was successful. He escaped and went out of detention and instantly became the head of Mau Mau. He was indeed a leader from before, and so he fit the role. All this time, Kenyatta was still in detention and was detained until 1960. It's from here that plans for actual independence started. General Baimunge and another, General Mariama, were in close contact with Kenyatta. Very close. Now, this is where the story takes a shocking turn. Now, when Kenya as a country was negotiating for its independence with the British, it involved most important person at the time. From both sides, one, the Kenyan side, persons who were in the list included freedom fighters such as Mau Mau and its heads, being General Baimunge. Two, political parties such as the Kenya African Union, KANU, and three, political heads such as Kenyatta, Jaramogi and others, now the British side. The ceasefire between the British and the Kenyan fighters itself required few delegative persons from both sides, and the British chose General Baimunge due to his strong leadership skills and high paramilitary experience and ability to bring Kenyans together. Baimunge was to lead Kenya temporarily as the British government ceased to control the country. And this is clearly meant he was to afterwards rule the country. By this time, General Baimunge was actually the man with powers regarding the people of Kenya. And yes, the ceasefire was agreed upon by both sides. Baimunge didn't forget his fellow Mau Mau. He was the man in between Kenya and Britain. He had the unwavering spirit of justice for all. Baimunge immediately declined to take any piece of land offered by the British unless all Mau Mau freedom fighters got pieces of land. Yes, it was General Baimunge who was supposed to take full leadership of Kenya after independence, but this is what happened that changed the course of the story. You won't believe this. Now, according to those close to Baimunge, especially his wife Evangeline Baimunge, Jomo Kenyatta took advantage of Baimunge's loyalty to him. He offered him lots and promised lots. And here are them. It's believed that Kenyatta himself offered General Baimunge to be the first Kenyan Army General Commander. Additionally, he was promised 10,000 acres worth of land in Timau and offered him a new Land Rover with Kenyan flags on it. Now, imagine a Land Rover in 1960, when literally almost everyone was walking barefoot and some never even saw a moving car. On top of it, it was to bear flags as if he was the president. Additionally, he was promised thousands of acres of land for his Mau Mau people. Not only that, Baimunge was offered 20 kgs worth of Kenyan cash hidden in containers. This cash was delivered to him straight from Kenyatta himself. And this is not according to me, it's according to his wife, who said that Baimunge used this money to buy a Land Rover. His friend General Mariama was offered 15-acre farm. And why all this? Just to give in his power to Jomo Kenyatta. It's not known how Baimunge fell into this trap, but yes, he agreed, but he still demanded more. Especially demanded a big share even in the national government. Now, after the Land Rover, here is the turn of events. Kenyatta got tired with Baimunge of how he needed to have a bigger portion in the government. Remember, in the early days before independence, the man who negotiated between Kenya and Britain ceasefire agreement was Baimunge. At that time, he could be able to ascend into power if he wanted, because bringing the British government into agreement deserved a great sense of respect. It also meant that the Kenyan government and the British government saw something in him. That is the reason as to why he was chosen. But things didn't go as planned, because after independence and Kenyatta being the head of state and Baimunge given a few nourish here and there just to seize his quest for power, things got worse. The government stakeholders had another plan. Kenyatta himself said that there can't be two heads of state in one country, him and Baimunge. This meant that either Kenyatta be the president or Baimunge be the president, but not two of them at the same time. Kenyatta said that Baimunge was causing chaos and his government won't allow that. Things got hotter and hotter. That night, the guerrillas were driven to mid-town and returned to the forest, preparing for what seemed like an inevitable confrontation. At this point, Kenyatta got tired. In response to Baimunge's defiance, Kenyatta unleashed the former colonial army, a brutal force made up of both white and black soldiers, paramilitary police, and the notorious Humungati militia. The assault on the Mau Mau began with intensive bombings across Kirinyaga region. A dusk to dawn curfew was imposed on Meru. Innocent civilians were caught in the crossfire as Kenyatta forces moved with ruthless precision. General Baimunge was killed on January 26, 1965 at Nkando Yankoma Forest. Generals who died on that day included Baimunge, Ruku, and Chui. Their bodies were paraded in Meru town as a grim display of Kenyatta's state power. Field Marshal Musa Mariama recalls the devastating scene, describing how he rushed to Meru to see Baimunge's body. In the aftermath of Baimunge's death, a deep sense of betrayal settled over the Meru people. Despite their central role in the Mau Mau rebellion, they were left out of political and economic power structures that emerged post-independence. In all and economic aspects, the scars of this betrayal remains, with the Merus feeling sidelined and neglected in the halls of power. Baimunge's death was not just the loss of a general, but the silencing of a voice that had fought for true justice and equality. To this day, the Meru people remember him as a hero, a symbol of their struggle for recognition in a country they helped to free, but one that seems to have forgotten their sacrifice. One of the names that should be remembered in the political hierarchy or in the political space in Kenya is General Baimunge. Why this? General Baimunge is one of the freedom fighters of Kenyan independence. These are the people who fought for the free and independent Kenya. These are the people who made sure that Kenya, as today we are speaking, Kenya has freedom. General Baimunge is the person who came in between the whites and the blacks, that is Kenyans, to create a free space of agreement to create a free independent Kenya. General Baimunge, after his death, his family was neglected, was left out in the political space or in the top government positions. The people who fought for the free and independent Kenya, who also fought with General Baimunge, one of them is Jomo Kenyatta, and another one is Oginga Odinga. Why this? Jomo Kenyatta, after his death, his family was also remembered and was held in political space in Kenya for a very long period of time, especially Kenyans paying a price by electing Uhuru Kenyatta, his son, into power, ruling Kenya for over 10 years. And on the other side, the son of Oginga Odinga, the late Raila Amolo Odinga, was also in the political space, in the opposition, ruling the Kenyan opposition party and Kenyan supporting him for over 30 years. But the family of Baimunge, or General Baimunge, or Field Marshal General Baimunge, was left out in the political space and also was left out in the top government positions. Nobody pays a price as to why, or nobody pays a price why the General Field Marshal Baimunge fought for this country. It is a very sad story. Even his wife and his family, his kids, who are neglected, and nobody even recognizes them today to pay the price that his father paid for the free and independent Kenyan. No matter how hard he fought for this country, but his family was left out in the political hierarchy, or in the political space, or in the top government positions in Kenya. It is a very sad story of the General or Field Marshal Baimunge.